I've been a real estate photography business owner for over 10 years now, and I wanted to make this video because I was looking back on, the different stages of growth in my business and the mistakes I made, the things I did right. And it's really interesting that all of the mistakes that I made that really held my business back at different times were all sort of the same mistake, just made in different ways. Really my biggest mistake I've ever made. And so on this video, I want to break down a little bit of my story growing my real estate media business, some things I had to learn, and what that mistake is so that you can see when you're about to make it, because you may be thinking, hey, I didn't make it before and I saw it, and so I'm not going to make it again, but it's a mistake that you can repeat over and over. So here's what this looks like. I started my real estate media business and I started getting some shoots, just like many of you will. I started doing the Instagram method. I was willing to put in the work, and I didn't know what the Instagram method should look like at the time. Our process now is much more refined, but I did an early version of that, and I started to get some shoots, and I started to get busy with shoots, and so I stopped doing as much of the Instagram method. And then I realized my business kind of plateaued. Sure, I'd get some referrals and it would grow, but it wasn't quite to that level where referrals would fully take over. And so I had to kind of go back to doing more outreach to grow my business to the next level. And that worked, and that was great. And I said, looking back on that as I moved, I was like, well, that's a lesson learned. Like, I need to keep doing stuff that grows my business, right? And so I was like, okay, I figured that out. So I kind of made that part of my process. And then I grew my business a little more. We started getting to like 4 or 5K a month. And I had this wild idea, and I was like, we've gotten here, we're getting successful at this point, because it took me way too long to get to 4 or 5K a month. And so it felt like so much work that when I got there, it felt like I was like, had to achieve this huge success, which granted for me at the time, it felt like that, and it probably was, but it wasn't big compared to what I could do as a real estate media business owner. And so I started getting a little confident. I'm like, I kind of know what I'm doing. And so I said, what's going to grow my business to the next level is really raising the quality of the work that I do. Now, granted, when I'm saying that, I'm not saying I did garbage work and I was going to make it good, because that absolutely would be necessary to grow your business. What I'm talking about is my work was like, if you look at everybody else out there shooting, I'm like in the top 5%. Like, my stuff is good, right? Window views are clear. The edits are good. Like, the photos look good. And very infrequently do real estate agents say anything about them not being good. And so it wasn't like, man, I'm having all these problems with quality or with whatever at the time that I need to fix that to grow. It was me thinking, hey, that's what my clients want. And so I'm going to fix that so I can grow my business. So I took a ton of time trying to figure out ways to shoot better. I implemented, and this is years ago, so it sounds silly now, but I started trying to use a flash, which very few real estate photographers do now. It's really only the people who've been doing it forever that just kind of have stayed doing that. So like I implemented that into my workflow. I implemented some like more luxury products that like took way longer to shoot, but like weren't that much better. Like they were only a little bit better. And I just put a ton of time into this. And the feedback from agents was like, it's cool, but like I don't really need it. And so I was like, man, what about if all that time that I could have spent on getting more clients for my business, I had done that instead of putting on this other thing. And so that's sort of when I identified what the biggest issue is. And it's just like, the mistake is losing focus, but it looks different ways at different times. And so that's really what I'm talking about. So like, look back, I'm like, okay, it was a mistake when I stopped doing client acquisition as much the first time. And it was a mistake when I changed my focus onto something that I thought was going to grow my business versus what I knew was going to grow my business. I was looking for like, people call it shiny object syndrome and a bunch of other stuff. And so you're probably thinking, Eli, okay, I get it. Like the mistake is losing focus and not just doing the thing that grows your business. Got it, I won't make that, but I promise you, you'll be tempted to make it again. It just looks different later. Okay, so fast forward a little bit, right? My business has grown to about 25K a month. And I'm really feeling successful now. I'm not taking home 25K a month, but I'm like, we're making 25K. Like, I know what I'm doing. I'm a great business owner. It's kind of the stuff that everybody falls into. And I'm sure there's elements that are true. Like most people will not build a 25K a month business, but a 25K a month business is micro tiny in the scheme of business. So it's like success, but not success, right? Anyway, I get to that. And I'm like, I really want to get to 50K a month. And I remember, like, I can remember, and I'm smiling because I remember this conversation that I like basically had with myself of like, we're already doing 25K a month with real estate media. What about if I added on, what about if I did websites? I've heard these companies charging like 5K for like these quick websites. Like I can build a website. So like I'll do 25K a month, but the way I'm going to get to 50K is I'm going to build websites for real estate agents, for people that are like in the industry, kind of real estate agents, builders, maybe title companies, like other people. So I started doing that. Builders was the main one. I did a website for a builder, and I made like 4 or 5 grand doing it. It took a horrendous amount of time. And I was like, okay, I learned a lot of stuff on that. So I tried to get some more. And then I was like, every time I would try to work on this business, something would happen over here in the real estate media side that would take my attention. I'd get frustrated because I'm like, I'm trying to do this. all that to say, this business kept growing, the real estate media business, and the website business was just taking all my freaking time and not making me any money. And so again, I kind of had this realization. I'm like, Eli, stop being an idiot. Like this is working. Just do more of this. But you get that like, man, I'm making a few $100 a shoot here. Like, what if I can do 4,000 or 5,000 like per website? And it's like, you can't compare invoices of two completely different products. You can do like 1,000 real estate photo shoots the time it takes to do a website. But here's the worst part. Even after I realized that I shouldn't have been doing websites because it wasn't my core thing, there's a million things you can do as a business owner. And the more successful you come as a business owner, the more enticing those things look and the more confident you think you are to do them. But what the problem was, even after I realized, Eli, don't lose focus, just do the real estate media company, I had these people that I built websites for. Hey, can you change this? Hey, can you do this? So like even after trying to get out of it, I was still being sucked into doing stuff in it. So it was like this trap that I got myself into that I had to like drag with me now. And so you think lesson learned? Absolutely not. Lesson was not learned. A few years later, I decided that, we're going to stick with just real estate media. We learned our lesson on the websites, but let's, kind of do everything vertically that needs to be done to get a house ready for sale. So like, if you think of like vertically, the different things that need to happen, it's like, well, the agent needs to get the house and the house needs to be prepped for sale and then the house needs to be shot. And so I started thinking, well, what if we did like, we could move the agent's signs and lock boxes to shoots? That would be helpful. That's like kind of close, right? So we thought about that and we thankfully didn't put too much effort into that. But then I really got a wild hair and I was like, all these houses need to be prepped. And so we could do like cleaning services to prep the house. We could do home staging and we could do landscaping outside to get the house ready. Again, same path. I put a bunch of time into this stuff that seemed great. You charge $10K for staging and some landscaping, right? And so not saying that business wasn't good. I think you can build an incredibly large landscaping business. You can build an incredibly large home staging business. You can build a great real estate media company, right? And so again, I had to learn the lesson of like, what are you doing diverting the focus? And so the biggest mistake I've ever made, as you can see, is not just doing more of the thing that has already been proven to make you money. So my advice to you is if you decide to be a real estate media company, don't think about anything else until you've hit whatever your goals are. And then even then I'd reconsider before because you're probably going to set another goal. So what that would look like is don't do anything else besides standard listing media. You can totally build a 50, 100 to 300K a month business doing that, right? And the reason I jumped around numbers is because I was like, well, you can build 50, you can build 100. And then I was like, well, I've seen people that build 150. And then Todd, who's been on the live a couple times and is a good friend of the REPP community and great person in general, he's built a 300K a month real estate media business, and all they do is listing media. They occasionally do some like branding related stuff, but like the vast majority of the revenue, $300,000 per month on real estate media. And so if that can be done, you don't have to. And where people go wrong is kind of the mistake I made is like, hey, I'm doing 25K doing this. It's hard to grow it past this level. What Eli at the time just needed to learn was the skill of teaching somebody else to do the photos because I was kind of the one doing everything, or at least the majority of it. And so it was like, man, that's a hard next challenge. It seems easy to just start a new business. And that's always a mistake because what you're comparing, the phrase I really like is you're comparing informed pessimism, meaning you're like, man, I'm doing 25K a month. It's going to get hard to get further, but you're informed as to why, because you're like, man, it's hard to hire a photographer and train them, right? And so your informed pessimism. On the other side, starting the new business was uninformed optimism. So you have this optimism because you have no idea the challenges that are going to rise in this business. So you're comparing your, more depth of knowledge here with completely being a noob here. And of course this one looks easier because you don't know all the stuff that's going to come along with it. And so the mistake is always diverting your focus. And the frame I would encourage you to think about is if someone else has built a 300K or even a 50K real estate media business or 100K real estate media business without doing the thing you're considering, you can too. And the mistake is thinking that it's going to be easier to do two things at once. Like I've never found it easier to do two things at once in my business. If I'm fully optimizing for the amount of money I can make or the business size I can build, the way to do that is by cutting everything else out and going all in on that thing. And it's funny because this is not like a groundbreaking thing. Like I was told this many times. If you watch any business YouTube or influencers or anybody, they all talk about the same thing. People that have had successful exits, whether it was $1 billion or $10 million, they've been successful and they've sold their company. They're still in the process. They have a great company. They all say the same thing is like the focus has been the most costly thing to them. And so my encouragement to you is as you're growing your real estate media business, if this is what you've decided you want to do, go all in. Not only is it going to make it easier for you, it's going to be less stressful. You're going to have the highest chance of success. And so the biggest mistake I've ever made is losing focus in my business. And if you can just be laser focused on saying no, that will almost always make you more money than saying yes. And I know that sounds crazy because when you're first starting your real estate media business, you got to say yes to a lot of stuff. Maybe it's yes to doing some stuff for free. Maybe it's yes to a shoot that you don't really want to do because a little bit outside of your service radius, but you know you might want to get that client. That's a different type of saying yes. You're saying yes to the exact client you want to work with. You want to say no to every other request that is not the exact thing you want to work with. And I'd even take that a step further and say for real estate media business owners specifically, you even want to stay away from any kind of branding content with realtors. If it's not happening at a listing, I would encourage you to learn how to say no nicely. And the way to do that is to say, hey, I really appreciate you considering me for that. My skill is just with listings. And so I don't want to say yes to this and like do a bad job for you. It's just not my skill set. And so you either just leave it there and say thanks for the offer, or you say, but I've partnered with this local vendor who does great videography and branding stuff that I can send you his info. I just really want to keep the relationship with you for standard real estate media and not mess it up. People are going to ask you to shoot weddings, portraits, branding, events. They'll ask you to build websites. That's how they got started. They might even ask you to do home staging or bring their sign there for them. And you have to really learn, hey, what do I want to do and what do I not want to do? Because the thing that drives this is really scarcity. You think in order to achieve your goals, you're going to have to do more, but it's really, you're not going to have to do more things. You're going to have to do more of the thing. So don't lose focus like me. You'll grow so much faster than me. And that's why people in our community grow faster than I did, because I'm able to teach them through curriculum, through coaching calls, stuff like that. Of like, hey, stay on track, do just this, cut out everything. Even within real estate media, there's stuff you should and shouldn't spend your time on. So the more focused you can go, the more money you're going to make. And I hope you can not learn the way I had to learn, which is through all of your own mistakes. Speaking of mistakes, if you want help either starting your real estate media business or taking it to the next level, I get to spend my days helping people not make the mistakes that I made so they can grow in a way that I didn't grow. And you can learn more about that below. There'll be a link to grab a time where you can talk with my team more about what that would look like for you. I'll see you in the next video.